Welcome back to the shed. Today we're checking out something that I've been working on for about a month, but I've been thinking about for probably 15 years. This is my twin turbo Volvo redblock powered buggy go-kart thing. So it's been a while. I've been working away at this every spare minute I kind of get. Now I think I've got it at the point where you guys can kind of see my plan, and there's not really a plan. Well, there was an idea, and the idea was I need a test bed engine run stand to run my red blocks and try different setups on. And then it was like, well, I should put it on wheels, you know, so I can roll it outside. And then it was like, well, my driveway's dirt, so this should be big wheels. And then it was, well, I should make it steer, because a big heavy engine stand with big wheels is going to suck to push. And then it was, well, let's just put a diff in it and hook up a drive shaft and make a go-kart. So yeah, it kind of spiraled out of control, as they do. But I mean, I think every car guy at some point has pulled like a engine and transmission out, sat it on their shop floor, and kind of looked at it and been like, I could ride that. Right? So that's what this is. I want to ride an engine. But no, like most of the parts I had them already, and so it's kind of a cheap junkyard build. So it's just a bone stock B230F, 213Cs. I've always wanted to do a twin turbo. Before anyone says, or people will say, that won't work, or just put a properly sized single on, or do compounds, or any of the other stuff. I know, I don't care. Volvo 240 front subframe, Mark 1 Volvo 760 independent rear subframe, and then some random other 240, 740 bits and whatever I have lying around. There'll be all sorts of brands on it, I'm sure. But yeah, I'll kind of walk you through what I've got so far. It's very much a work in progress, and as you can see with this kind of stuff, it's temporary. But I wanted to get it to the point where it was on wheels so it looked like something. So that's why a lot of this is like this. Also makes it easier to push around my shop. It's not very heavy, but I'm going to keep adding steel to it in the efforts of protecting myself. Some kind of cage situation is definitely happening here. So yeah, I'll walk over what I've done so far, and you can all have a look. So we may as well get right to it, because I'm sure everyone is curious. The turbos, there's two of them. Normally there's one. Yeah, so a friend reached out on Instagram. I think his handle is Harry Co. I'll put the link somewhere there so you guys can see him. He also does like chips and EZK daughter boards and a bunch of other stuff. Super nice dude. But he messaged me and was like, hey, I'm building this twin turbo manifold for my 740. I've kind of shifted directions with the project. Do you want to like pick up the pieces and start with something that's a little bit, I've done some of the fab? And I said, sure, yeah, send them out. So he very nicely agreed to send me most of this stuff. So yeah, we've got two 13Cs, which are the stock Volvo turbos on most of the newer 740, 940s, I think, stuff like that. And they kind of max out at about 180 horsepower-ish worth of air. I mean, you can turn up the boost higher, but they make hot air, and hot air isn't good for boost. So two of them, theoretically, that's what, 360 horsepower worth of air? I'm sure the math doesn't exactly work like that, but we're going to give it a go. So true duals, 1 and 4 feed one hot side, and 2 and 3 feed the other hot side. Separate air intakes, they'll share the same MAF in theory, and then the outlets of the turbos are going to feed one side of this. This is from a Dodge 24 valve Cummins, and I just got it for the core. I'm going to cut the end tank off here, make a new end tank with a divider. So then each turbo is going to feed essentially half of it, and it's going to come across here, and then this end tank I'm going to modify, and it will merge the two turbos air and then up into the intake. Supposedly that's good for, these things can kind of chat back and forth and push air from one into the other and this and that and all twin turbo problems. Doing it through the intercooler and merging them at the end, I guess, kind of acts like a bit of a cushion. I guess I'm trying to think, like I've done plumbing and stuff. It's kind of like a water hammer arrestor type thing. I did more time, I guess, before they merge together to hopefully stop them from feeding back. So that's the basic plan with the twin turbo stuff. Obviously 2 exhausts, 2 oil feeds, 2 oil drains, 2 wastegates. Not a huge amount of room there, as you can see, but I did extend these. This is all 240 front subframe stuff, so this is all mostly temporary, as you can see by, things like that. That's not safe. But for the purposes of finding out where everything is going to live, because extending the front control arms, while it also made the 240 front the same width as the 760 rear, it also let me push the strut tops away from the engine and still give me decent camber and caster, and also give me more room between the turbos and all my suspension stuff. So everything is kind of done for the reason of something else, as kind of happens with a project like this, or at least I'm trying to think ahead and do stuff like this. I'll probably work myself into a corner, but you get that on these big jobs. So the basic frame is just 2x3 box HSS steel. HSS is hollow structural steel. It's 1/8 inch wall. That's what I talked to a few people about, and they said you should start your chassis with, before anyone gets all uppity about this thing folding. There is a whole cage going on it, because reason 1, I don't want to die. Reason 2, I want to make it strong. So adding a cage kind of gives you another level of support and structure. So the basics of the frame were dictated by the width of the 240 front subframe. The 760 IRS kind of has these weird bushing mounts, and I can't know if you can see, but there's full pieces of pipe that actually go all the way through, and then the bolt is technically just holding this together. So the shear load is on that big piece of pipe and not just a little bolt, 1/2 inch bolt. Which is kind of how it was in the original car. I kind of studied it as much as I could. This front attachment points are the same. The trailing arm, it's kind of a weird setup here. So like everything The spring and everything sits in the pocket. I'm assuming this had those Nero mat shock things, and I think they actually ran up inside the coil. But I think I'm going to add outboard shocks here somewhere that aren't in the way of the tire, and then have just a lower mounting point and an upper mounting point somewhere in this area. Right now this is all just Bluetooth. But yeah, these things are beefy, and I've kind of built most of the base structure here. This is probably all going to get plated in, and there's going to be cage points tied on it. The cage is pretty much going to pick up on all of those, which will hopefully give them more strength as well. I'm trying to think about this as much as I can, but I'm sure I've overlooked lots. Like I said, this is just a stock B230F. I did modify this K-Jet intake plenum with injector bungs and a 960 throttle body. I don't know if you can see. Oh yeah, you can kind of see. And actually increased the volume of the plenum as well. About doubled it. So that was actually going to go on my drift car, but that never happened. So I figured, well, we'll throw it on this thing, and you know, in the efforts of science, in the interests of science. So I am going to keep it auto for now. And as depressing as that is, there is a reason, and the main reason is money. That's an AW70. I have an AW71. You do the accumulator mod, which essentially just makes them shift harder, and then they last up to 300-ish horsepower, which that's wishful thinking, but maybe, you know. Anyways, an M46 or any Volvo transmission behind it is going to explode, and they cost too much money now, and doing a T5 swap like I did in my drift car is just more money. So in the efforts of keeping everything cheap or as close to free, auto for now, because I have like 4 of them, so why wouldn't I use them? When I build everything, I am going to build it with a manual clutch pedal assembly, because we all know projects change and everyone will yell at me to put a manual in it, so I may as well just future-proof that now. But for now, auto, big trans cooler. Actually, I think I have over there, yeah, you can see there's a big AC condenser that actually came on the front of the Dodge intercooler, and I might repurpose that as a big trans cooler. So drive shaft, I guess, situation from the auto to the 760. This is not permanent, but it kind of works. That's the front half of a 240 drive shaft, and I swapped some yokes around and stuff, so I put the slip right on the front of it. Usually this would be flipped 180 and the slip would be that way, and then there's another half of the drive shaft into the diff. So the splines obviously are only about halfway in, which isn't ideal, so this needs to be about 2 or 3 inches longer. But for now it moves around, and I can kind of check my clearances. It doesn't rub, but it's very close, so that's going to have to be cut out and like a piece of pipe radiused in or something. But the other reason for doing the IRS setup is that if I was doing a live axle setup with this short of a wheelbase and this short of a drive shaft, you're talking about some big angles it's going to have to move through, which doesn't make for happy U-joints. Using the IRS setup, that doesn't really move. I mean, it's rubber bushing, so it move a little bit, but like all the suspension travel and stuff happens on the outboard side of the arms. So I had it, and also I did think about it. If I made it a live axle setup, it would have to be way longer, or I'd have to limit the suspension a bunch, or do a bunch of other things that I wasn't really feeling. So yeah, it gets independent rear, so take that as you will. As far as running this whole show, I'm just going to do stock LH 2.4 for now. That's a LH 2.4 harness I pulled out of a newer 240. For those that don't know, the engine harness on 240s with LH 2.4 is totally separate. As far as tying it into the car, there's one plug here with about 12 wires, and I think you only need about 4 of them to make it work. So pretty easy to make standalone if you don't feel like going the full standalone route. And I've had pretty good success with bigger maths. That's a 3-inch math from a 960, and chipped computers. They seem to work okay. Like, I know standalone's better, but you know, this project is all about saving money and doing things on the cheap. So why would I spend, you know, a bunch of money on a Mega Squirt or something when I have all that stuff? So yeah, LH24. It's going to have power steering. I'm going to have vacuum brakes because I want it to stop and turn well, because it's probably going to go very well. And yeah, I mean, as far as like the stance goes, these are 17-inch rims on it now, which are a little too big for my liking. I'm probably going to have 15, so it'll be lower a bit with that. And then everything right now is at full droop. You can see there's chunks of wood jammed in everything just to keep it up. So it's going to be a lot lower too. So yeah, I don't know. The stance, I don't know where the stance is going to end up, but I'm not going to worry about that until I'm done most of the fabrication on it, because then I'll know how much it weighs. And then that will see where the suspension settles. So, plans. Steering, as far as it is, it's all stock Volvo 240 stuff. There is a steering column from a 240 over there, but you know, that's just going to go back, and the steering wheel is actually going to be like somewhere here. Your seating position is going to be pretty much right before the rear subframe. Trying to get the weight as far back as I can to offset that heavy red block lump there. So the battery is going to be back there, fuel tank, radiator, rear mount radiator with some hard lines running along the chassis rail. The only heat exchangers that are going to be up front are the intercooler and the power steering and the transcooler. So everything else at the back. Yeah, I've got to build a floor next. But I think before that happens, the cage has to happen, because I have to figure out where everything is going to mount. So the cage itself, I'm kind of planning on coming up the front, picking up those strut tops, keeping it low, and then rising up with some A-pillars, and then up and over your head, and then tying into those back rails. The radiator will be kind of on the back tube uprights, and then you'll kind of be sitting, like I said, right in front of the rear subframe. And then the cage will be tying into most of those suspension pickup points at the back, and then also suspension pickup points at the front. And then there will also be a bit of a nose to hang the intercooler and everything else on. One of my good buddies who does a lot of tube work is going to help me with that, because that is way out of my comfort zone, and I'll just probably succeed in turning all of my pipe that I've got laying in there into a bunch of scrap. So he's going to help me bend it in the right place. And I think we've actually got some software that he's going to get as well for his computer that'll help us kind of model what we're planning on doing. I'm not sure what it's going to look like yet, but I'm kind of thinking like Lotus 7, Manx, Dune Buggy, Mad Max type thing. But I mean, that's going to be dictated by where we have to run the tube to pick up into those hard points, which I can't really change. And then where we can kind of take some more artistic liberty with and make it look cool in Mad Max. So yeah, that's about it for now. It's it rolls. It's very light. You know, you can take it and like I'm barely pushing on it and it moves. So I would say maybe right now it's 900 pounds, 800 pounds. The goal is to keep it under 1,800 pounds, something like that. And power-wise, I mean, like I said, 360 horsepower worth of air, theoretically. I know it doesn't work exactly like that, but call it 300. If I could get the fuel in there and light it at the right time, then, I mean, I guess 300 horsepower isn't out of the realm of possibilities. Which in a 1,500 pound buggy is stupid. Like that is, you are going to die, or at least have the illusion of almost dying a lot, which is kind of what I'm going for, I guess. So, but no, I mean, try and approach it as intelligently as possible while still saving money and having fun is the goal. But you know, we're kind of going to cross each bridge as we get there, and then make new ones and burn new ones. So hopefully that gives you guys kind of a brief idea of what I'm thinking here. and kind of the direction this project's going. It's just for fun. Like, I know that this is stupid, but I'm just having fun building stuff on the cheap, and my T5 car needs a bunch of expensive parts that I just don't really feel like buying right now. So in the efforts of keeping myself busy and still building something cool, the leftover buggy junkyard thing is going to happen. So yeah, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. I'll try and be into doing some more updates on it. Next is going to be cage work. So yeah, I've got some different modes on my camera I'm playing with as well to hopefully make it more interesting than just me talking at the camera, because, you know, some people like the vlog thing, some people don't. I try and do a mix of everything. So yeah, until then, thanks for watching. Have a good one. So I guess for like all the people that say this is stupid and dangerous, yes. All the other people that say twin turbos are a waste of time and probably going to be disappointing and also not work, also yes. I'm still going to do it. Why not? Like, just do it. So, you know, just, if it sucks, well, then we'll put a single turbo on it. Well, and then it'll work just fine, because I've done lots of single turbo Volvos. But, you know, it gets to a point where it's boring. And supercharged car, as I'm sure people have seen, it was hilarious. Like, yeah, it kind of sucked, but, you know, it made cool noises. And, you know, and then I twin charged it and it kind of sucked even more, but it made even more cool noises. So it's, you know, like, I guess it's really, this is just a piece of equipment for turning gasoline into cool noises. So if it does that, then it's a success.